poor people here who have dated rich people. What did you learn? How was the contrast? That in majority of the cases all is fine until you met the family and friends. You sit there like an idiot unable to relate to anything what they say, and once you think some familiar topic appears, it ends up with a discussion about 10k baby strollers, wines, or childhood memories about skiing in Switzerland or taking a trip to a seaside with their first Porsche. Their friends' interests were mostly things outside my tax brackets. Couldn't even relate to typical girly discussions about makeup and clothing because their talks were about picking Birkin over Chanel, not about cute Zara top. Problem starts also when comes to buying a gift because there is no way you can match the amount of what they wanna buy you, and any kind of decision involving finances when you want to go 50/50, but the holiday which your partner picked are your 5 salaries. Lot of people make it work. I tried 2 times and each time I felt out of place very quickly. I grew up very blue collar poor. The men I knew fixed cars, re-roofed their own houses, new plumbing and electrical stuff, etc. My husband grew up very wealthy. His family had a massive house, a pool, a vacation home in Spain, and maids. Honestly, the contrast was stark. The first thing he did after we moved in together was put liquid dish soap in the dishwasher. He didn't know anything. He didn't know the vacuum needed to be emptied. It could have been a deal breaker, but he fully embraced his ignorance and learned. It was a whole new world and he loved it. One of my favorite memories is of putting up our first Christmas tree. He'd never been part of that and got so much joy from it. I hear you. We got invited to spend a weekend at a mountain vacation home of some wealthy friends. The wealthy husband and I went out to get wood for the fireplace. There were rounds cut but they weren't split. He admitted to me that he didn't know how to split wood. I showed him how to grab the splitting maul with gusto, put his entire body into swinging it all the way around, and hit the round with a ring the bell at the fair force that sent the halves of the round flying to either side in fear. His ear-to-ear grin as he split wood was priceless. My ex was a poor sod, but his family, I got to know, was buttered. I also got to know he was basically leeching off them, which led to the strange arrangement of him not earning nearly as much money as he expected of anyone else like me. He would constantly talk shit about the way I lived an ordinary life. My furniture was shit, my clothes were cheap, and my gifts were never good enough. How did I not buy my food at the gourmet store anyway? According to him, I didn't know how to cook either, because how could you make real Italian pasta without the real Italian recipe? Recipes that his parents brought from all of their luxury travels all over the world, and none that came from him. His cooking sheet was made even more hilarious by the fact this dude couldn't cook even a simple dish on his own. But his brother was a chef, so whenever he needed instructions, which was always, he would call his brother. I left him soon because his attitude was utterly insufferable. What I learned is that it's okay if you're rich. You're still dateable as long as you're not an ashat. Never knew. She worked a normal job, lived in a normal apartment. It wasn't until someone told me after we broke up, she moved for work, that I found out her family was minted. Maybe she wasn't close with them. I think it's admirable that she was living normally despite having a rich family. It's a good way to not lose touch with reality. No, met her parents once. Dad drove a normal car, no designer clothes, just seemed like normal people. When I say they are with money, it isn't just a few million. Bumped into her years and years later as our daughters ended up going to the same school. I still didn't understand how rich until my daughter mentioned the private jets. Had a girlfriend in high school. We dated until sophomore year of college. What baffled me wasn't her disregard for the cost of things, but the fact that she couldn't understand why I couldn't just pick up and take her out for nice dinners, or buy her $400 Louis Vuitton sneakers she wanted for Christmas, especially since she was willing to buy me $250 Jordans. I declined. She was such a sweet girl but had no concept of other people coming from poor families. No idea how I had no money despite being 16, 17 and not having a job. When I got my first minimum wage job at 18, I spent pretty much everything I had on her for several years. She also took me out and bought me nice gifts, but she never had a job. She had a $300 week allowance from her dad, but would ask him for money whenever she wanted anything, so she wouldn't spend her own allowance on anything. She had like $9k in her bank account by the time we were 18. And I had $200 to my name most of the time lol. Very nice girl. Gorgeous. She was very good to me. But I eventually lost interest because of reasons that had nothing to do with money. She was a full-time professional fine artist, oil painter. Dad was a pioneer in green energy. Whole family is loaded as a result. She was able to focus on school, earn her MFA, travel the world on residencies, etc. She was wonderful, and goes to show you that when you have a well-adjusted upbringing, support, and the money to provide resources, you can be who you were born to be. Absolutely could not relate to the socio-economic struggles of the people she dated though. When I was 26 I was making around 20k as a server. I dated a 32-year-old corporate attorney who was making 300k. I think the biggest thing it showed me is that I was capable of more in my life. For a long time I thought I was just going to be a server because that's all I could do. She showed me to want more and to strive for more. I'll always be thankful to her for that because she changed the trajectory of my life. I went back to school and have a different career now. She pushed me to want something different and it's something I didn't know was possible until I met her. Dated the daughter of a wealthy member of parliament for my country's Conservative Party. During dinner discussions at their home, it really hammered it home how little her mother, the MP, understood about the daily reality of being poor. Partner born to wealthy family, generational subdued wealth. International trips a few times a year, live-in housekeeper, best schools, NOS, sports and art exposure. Good person, gave back with volunteering and donations. Contrast could not relate to debt, fears of homelessness, or money anxiety. Biggest contrast, never afraid to try new things or make mistake. Took a job that didn't work out. That's okay, family will keep you afloat until you find something else. Broke a leg overseas because you took a skiing risk in Italy. No worries, we'll charter something or find a way to get you out. I don't have that kind of freedom. The family was an entity in itself and had rules. Relationships are everything. The family itself is a thing, the club, the parties, the vacations, the homes, the cars, the business. It's all about the family. The patriarch, the traditions, the schools, the business partners and the neighborhood and the club. It's not a bad thing, it's just different. I was raised to be independent and get the duck out of my parents' house. They stick together like glue. Everyone has a role to play, but they have security and they belong. I never belonged anywhere. I was raised by people who had kids because that's what you were supposed to do, and then I got the duck out of their house when I turned 18 and that was that. I dated a guy whose sister is a Russian pop star and a Russian politician. He asked me to pick him up back, his car was being delivered from overseas. I'm like, whatever, you don't have a car, I'll drive. Sure enough, the next day he picks me up in his brand new with the plastic still on it BMW 750i. I lost my purse at a club and he had the whole place turn the lights on and find it. He took me to dinner every night and never let me pay for anything. He didn't go home for Christmas and I was too embarrassed of where I came from to ask him to come home and meet mine. That was a wild time. I'm about to get married to one. For reference, her parents just spent $400,000 cash renovating their porch. My parents live in a second-hand mobile home. There is a huge difference. First of all, my future in-laws are well known in their community for being kind, charitable, and generous, and my fiancée is the same way. They are level-headed, imho. When we first started dating, she asked me what I wanted for Christmas. I said some new clothes would be nice, since mine had holes in them and were old. She said, well, I'm gonna buy those for you anyways. That's not a gift, I mean a real gift. She spent thousands giving me new clothes in the first 6 months. Some expensive, some just regular everyday stuff from Old Navy. But she literally bought me an entirely new wardrobe. Then gave me a small $500 gift for Christmas and her parents bought me an $800 gift. Not to mention the fact that she gave me a pair of Beats and a practically new iPhone because she didn't use them anyway. This was obviously mind-blowing to me. I bought her a $150 gift, but she was thrilled with it because it was thoughtful. A nice lighted jewelry cabinet instead of her keeping all her jewelry in various small wooden boxes all unorganized. I will say that for our wedding, she about had a meltdown when she found out our budget was only $50,000, not including the welcome party, the wedding planner, or the honeymoon, which is probably an additional $15K. It only lasted for one day before she accepted it and moved on, leaving any animosity behind, which I was really proud of her for. Overall, her or her family never judged me or mine, probably because they haven't always had money. The biggest difference I noticed is that her family bargains for everything. They do trade deals with other companies, call in favors, negotiate everything, wait until stuff is on sale, buy quality buy it for life stuff, etc. Probably what made her dad such a successful businessman and lets them stay rich. I grew up middle class and sometimes really struggled depending on my dad's job status. My wife grew up quite wealthy, think maids, nanny, vacations all over the world, private school. Our biggest hurdle during the first couple years of dating was lifestyle issues. Just seeing how much she'd spend without even worrying about the price or budgeting, not thinking twice about a purchase or when grocery shopping. It was the small things I was more amazed at and found tacky more anything. If you asked her, she would say I have far more financial literacy than her. She's a hard worker and works long hours but still has that safety net. We are happily married, but navigating status class was a huge hurdle in the early stages of our relationship and sometimes still creeps in. Even now during the holidays it's noticeably different between how my family does things vs hers. My siblings have great jobs, homes, etc, but still does not compare to how elaborate and expensive my wife's family does things. I've dated a couple. I grew up adjacent to wealth and first off, they were lovely people. Caring and thoughtful. But the truth is, they were simply unable to understand poor. What I realized was that the struggle to afford things binds people together. And working towards a common goal, say a trip or a more expensive item, is a reward that couples can share together. We did it, they'll say. I also realized just how much the subject of money comes up in any relationship, and if you aren't in the same boat financially, it's alienating for both of you. Hard to get past that in most situations. I wouldn't say I was poor, more average. But the two wealthy women I dated were both quite spoiled. They expected to get their way, and what was interesting for me was that they both expected their money to open doors and solve problems, rather than using courtesy or charm. My ex-best friend was the same. What was very noticeable for her especially was the smallest thing was a crisis. People who have never dealt with true pain or loss because they've always been shielded from it are upset by small things. I've done it twice, once in undergrad and once in vet school. The girl in undergrad kind of felt like she was dating me for the experience. Like she'd never been to an Aldi before and kind of went overboard on the Aldi finds, and was very confused that I went to both Aldi and Myers for my groceries. Her dad absolutely hated me because I wanted to be a vet instead of a real doctor like him. She always asked like weird questions about growing up not rich, and I'm pretty sure she thought my childhood was like the movie 8 Mile. I grew up in a suburb of Detroit, but very much not 8 Mile. Otherwise she was pretty chill about most things. She usually paid for stuff if we went on expensive dates, but she also seemed to genuinely enjoy the cheap dates I managed to find. Like I found a lot of nice trips with my student discounts. The girl in vet school was determined to pretty woman me. Or I guess more like the episode of The Simpsons where Lisa tries to make Willie a gentleman. Like she insisted I come to Whole Foods with her. She had a polo pony and she wanted me to learn about polo and ride horses and stuff. BTW. Horses really don't like me. She'd done a lot of study abroad and seemed almost offended I'd gotten into the program without it. She would buy like fine wines and cheese and then want to see how I reacted to them, and seemed surprised when I knew stuff from the museum. It was nice at first to get a bit spoiled, but it got weird. She also had no concept of what was expensive for the rest of us. So she would always want to do really fancy nights out at high-end clubs after exams, and the rest of us would be like, it's $2 beer night at the campus bar, so we're going there. Can I do the opposite? I'm relatively well off and dated people that grew up poor. The biggest takeaway, that's really unfortunate, is she conflated love with finances. She would perpetually try to show people she loved them by spending money on them. She would miss rent payments because she was trying to help friends who were behind on their rent payments. She would buy people gifts she couldn't afford. She would get upset with me for not spending as much as her on gifts to her because even I couldn't realistically justify the amount she would spend. It was really sad, honestly. She tried so hard to help everyone around her and was convinced that was the way to show love. But ultimately, it was destroying her life and made it so she would permanently stay poor. Taking on credit card debt because I love you. It was self-destructive. I grew up upper middle class, to lefty help people out, lawyers for parents, so not poor by any means, but I was engaged to a woman whose father was a partner at one of the US top 5 law firms. His retirement income is more than my parents' combined working incomes. I learned that they used money to attempt to solve all of their problems in life, especially interpersonal ones. I learned that even at that level of wealth, Americans still teach their kids we're poor. I learned that the social pressures that all of those people live with are ducking nuts, and as a result they and their social circles are infinitely more competitive and judgmental of each other than anyone I grew up around. She was spoiled AF, having grown up watching her mom scream at her dad anytime she was upset, and then seeing her dad spending money on her mom to placate her. She expected that in our relationship, and I as a broke grad student obviously could not provide that, but nor would I have wanted to even if I could have. I had a pretty rich girlfriend, and honestly she was actually very kind-hearted and caring. And also normal. She didn't even treat money like anything that is special, in a good way. But at the time my life was falling apart, and instead of accepting her help I just eliminated everyone from my life, and that was a huge mistake. She wasn't even forcing me to do anything. She just was there and ready to help in any way I needed, but I was a dumb idiot. I hope that whoever she's dating now is a great guy, cause she really deserves one. My wife's parents were loaded. She went to a posh private school, etc. I learned lots about how many resources fancy schools have compared to the state ones. The most hilarious I remember was that for my final design and technology project I built a clock, which was basically some bits of MDF with a couple of quid clock mechanism attached. My wife built a ducking hovercraft. Like, one she could race around a field. The biggest impact on her now is that she struggles a bit with budgeting and saving. Because it wasn't really a thing while she was growing up. If wanted something she could just have it. She had a net worth of 40 million or so, and didn't earn it due to her family being very wealthy. She was so disconnected with the real world, and was a true narcissist. Everything had to be her way, including aspects of my personality. It was constant nagging about aspects of me she didn't like and wanted me to change. She was very manipulative, and the moment I started to push back she ended it. Wild ride. Dated a very rich girl who had even richer friends. They really had no life skills because everything that was even slightly labor intensive was done by her staff. She didn't know how to make eggs. She didn't know how to do laundry. She had never gone grocery shopping. She had never used a vacuum. She didn't know how to do the dishes, etc. She was completely blown away when she would visit my house and see the sheer amount of labor that went into maintaining a family household. Groceries, cleaning, cooking, laundry, walking dogs, taking the bus, etc. I did appreciate that she was very unabashedly aware that she was pampered and sheltered. At no point did she try to downplay it or act like she was something she wasn't. But I don't think she truly felt bad about it until she visited my house. I'm not poor, but came from a working class AVG family and I do very well for myself now. Around 30 I dated a girl who I knew was rich when she told me to pick her up at her parents', and when I googled the address, the place had a gate to get in. She worked an honest teacher job and was very humble, kind and grounded. I did notice small things like for her day, she said she was going to buy herself $1,200 sandals. Ain't no teacher buying those. Things fizzled out after a few dates, but I always wonder how if people could date with such disparity in family socioeconomic classes. Found out after, her family is worth like half a billy. My first love was from a super rich family. She's a very kind, sweet, and thoughtful person. She was never a jerk to anyone. She's very humble, polite, definitely respectful. She's what you'd call high class in terms of personality and behavior. She's not like how Redditors envision rich people. She never really flaunted her wealth, but one time during her family's business party, I think it was Christmas or New Year, Michael Bublé performed for them. My ex wasn't crazy rich, but her family was well beyond comfortable. We graduated college together, and she went about 2 years just doing nothing because, well, she could. She could have gone a lot longer, but refrained because her dad was already starting to get testy. She was very down to earth and practical. The only real noticeable thing was her not working and still buying everything that she wanted. Again, it wasn't wild. She wasn't crazy with it, but the things she really wanted, she got with no delay. We wanted to move into a pretty nice apartment complex that our friends lived in. While we were meeting with the super the first time, she was fixing to reject us because I was the only one with a job and it didn't pay that much. We told her we both had savings and could realistically stay for several years even in the worst case scenario, but that didn't budge her. Until my ex pulled her bank statement out of her purse and handed it to the lady. The literal next thing out of her mouth was, "When were you looking to move in?" Always have a way out. People with money know it's a tool to control people and will use it. If you find you're staying because you've been trapped without ability to financially survive, well, no bueno. When we would vacation, I would get threatened abandonment in another place that I couldn't leave, so I'd have to comply. Dinner on him and we argued at the restaurant. Give in or he will pay only his portion. It was all control. Now I'll let people treat me but always am able to cover my flight back. Don't pay for me to control me. And I knew it'd get worse with kids and being married. You're at a rich person's whim if you put total trust in them for care. I have always dated guys who had their education paid for by their parents. Either mom and dad paid 100% of their education and rent in full, or didn't help pay rent but would send some money over every once in a while and would be there for emergencies. I just can't relate because my parents, despite doing well financially, would even grumble if I asked for €100 cash for birthday so I could buy a second-hand washing machine. They would say something like, "Don't expect a birthday gift next year." I never expected them to pay for my education. I never expected them to pay my rent, utilities or groceries or anything. I paid for everything myself. Which is absolutely fine. But sometimes I'll remember something and tell my partner and he'll be like, "WTF?" Like the time I had 0.15 cents and bought spaghetti without meat, veg or sauce and ate it like that because I was so hungry. And his immediate answer is, "Didn't your parents help pay for rent and groceries and education?" And I'm like, no. Her dad owned most of the real estate offices in the state. They all looked good but were weird as shit. Her brother basically only ate sardines and crackers. She was vehemently anti-vax. She's heir to a gigantic, publicly traded company. She never makes big purchases with her own money. Think houses, new cars, work vehicles for her ranch, massive renovation projects, etc. She borrows money against her portfolio for everything. The interest rate she pays on the loan is significantly less than the returns on her stocks. She either eventually pays off the loan with her income from her job, or if it's an appreciating asset, she either sells the asset for a huge and usually tax-free profit, then pays the loan off, or borrows against the asset since it's technically paid in full to buy more assets. Rinse and repeat forever.